The Greek economy couldn't function. It couldn't borrow money to pay for all the new jobs and benefits it created. It couldn't borrow the new money it needed to pay its old debts. This was a problem for Greece, but because of the unified monetary policy, it was also a problem for all of Europe. Much of Europe had been on a spending spree and borrowed more money than it could ever repay. But the problem is somebody has to pick up the tab, or else every country in the euro area will suffer. Since the countries that ran up the bill couldn't repay, everyone looked to Germany. Smaller countries suddenly had access to credit like never before. Greece and other countries, which previously could only borrow at rates around 18%, could now borrow for the same low rate as Germany. How? Germany's credit card. You see, joining the euro area is a lot like sharing a credit card. Germany's credit card. Lenders now believe that if Greece was unable to repay its loans, Germany and the other big economies of Europe would step in and repay them because they were now bound by a common currency. With a new abundance of cheap credit, Greece and other European countries were able to adjust their fiscal policies and increase spending to previously impossible levels. Some countries embarked on huge deficit spending programs, primarily for politicians to get elected. They made promises such as more jobs and generous pensions, all of it paid for with the new money they could now borrow. The governments of Greece, Portugal, and Italy accumulated huge debts. However, they were able to repay these debts with more borrowed money. As long as the borrowing continued, so did the spending and the unbalanced fiscal policies. As the debtor countries headed towards default, the whole continent of Europe was in danger. Even though the economies of the debtor countries are relatively small, they posed a huge threat because the European financial system is so interconnected, precisely because of the euro. Remember, the debtor countries borrowed money from banks, investors, and other governments throughout Europe. As the debtor countries get closer to default, everyone who lent them money becomes weaker, and everyone who lent those lenders money also becomes weaker, and so on and so forth. A problem in one country could reverberate across the whole continent, triggering a chain reaction of default. If Greece defaults, then Spain could default. Italy, Portugal, and Ireland could be next. Then France, then Germany.
Ilanis and others we met in Athens recently put faces to grim statistics. A stunning 26% unemployment rate. 58% for young people like George Giopoulos, a college graduate who's decided he must leave the country for now.
I hope to move abroad for a master's degree. I was thinking about it even before crisis. It was my dream. Yeah. But now I have to do it.
Greece's economy is entering its 6th year of recession and has shrunk by a 5th in just the last 3 years.
This is new boy.
Paralyzing businessmen like shipbuilder Vasilis Halkaitis, who had to lay off half his workers.
We're talking to a major client about building 6 new ships of 60 meters in length. However, the client is holding back on the contract until he is convinced that Greece will not go bankrupt.
For individuals, it all adds up to a reduced standard of living and an uncertain future. For Greece as a whole, it means that and more.
Retired electric company employee Yannis Polikretis is passionately gathering hundreds of receipts after the government advised citizens to stock them up as part of a plan to cut down on tax evasion, a common practice in Greece and one of the reasons for its economic woes. He says people are starting to realize that everyone must pay their share of taxes, but it hasn't been easy collecting receipts.
Οι διάφορες επιχειρηματικές δραστηριότητες όπως
Various businesses and professionals refuse, and in an unpleasant manner, I must say, like taxi drivers are at the fruit market for something that should be just standard practice.
Μπουν σε αυτή τη διαδικασία.
And then they just couldn't make it. They couldn't get the tax collection going. And that's really a problem you have in Greece. I mean, you hear it anecdotally, you hear it systematically, that they just don't have the tax collection. So whether it's the, Google Maps view of all the pools and only 5 pools are registered and there's really 1,000 of them, or whether it's the fact that you hear that doctors are underreporting their income and only something like 10% of doctors pay taxes because only 10% of doctors make enough money to pay taxes. I mean, so it's a systematic tax collection problem, and they haven't been able to write it.
Greece wants less austerity. Austerity is a word, but you can measure it through the primary surplus ratio. This is basically what a country saves divided by its GDP. If it's positive, you're saving money, but you're inflicting pain in pursuit of some future goal. You're being austere. Greece's bailout calls for a primary surplus ratio of 4.5%. This is to force it to make hard decisions about budgets. But according to the IMF, Greece would need to hold that number even higher at 7.2% for a decade if it actually plans to pay down its debt to Eurozone standards. There is very little reason to believe that this is possible. Over the last 10 years, Greece has run from negative to very negative, but last year it notched a positive 3%. Encouraging, right? But take the Eurozone as a whole. Since the euro began, all those countries together hit 3.6% only once in 2000, and now it's back below zero. Let's go broader and farther back. Since 1974, only 3 countries, period, have averaged greater than 5% for more than 10 years. Singapore, Norway, and Belgium, which spent the 90s trying to meet the Eurozone standards. Greece might have considered doing the same, but that's water under the bridge. According to the Center for Economic Policy Research, countries that hold a primary surplus over time tend to have consolidated political control by a single party. Greece has that for now. Kind of. These countries tend to have a high level of debt, which encourages them to save. Greece has that too. But they're also likely to have a positive balance of payments. That's more money coming in than out. And they're likely to save in a time of economic expansion, like Belgium in the 1990s, not like now. So, can Greece make it to 4.5% as the current agreement demands? Probably not. Can Greece make it to 7.2% and pay its debt down? No way. No how. Yes, when pigs fly.